Good morning and welcome back to another Talklets conversation. I pray this morning that you will open up your heart and let God reveal his holy word to you. I pray that you will open up your eyes wide and see all that he has for you. And I pray that you will open your ears and hear what he's been trying to reveal to you for some time. Go with me to the book of Matthew, chapter 16, verses 20 through 26. And while you're turning there, let me just give you a listen intro to this story because Jesus is healing the people. Jesus is performing miracles on behalf of the people, which makes Jesus approachable for all the people. I mean, all the people, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the ordinary people. Jesus just has this ability to draw and to be approachable. And so we find ourselves in the book of Matthew. And there's three characters that's not in this book now, but there's three characters in the Bible that I want you to open yourself up to. There's a possibility that you're one of these characters and that you live close to one of these characters. The first one is Peter. We know Peter. Peter will jack you up in a second. Peter has a temper. Peter has some anger issues, but Peter is a servant of Jesus Christ. And then there's Paul. And we know Paul. Paul had a walk away from God, and then he walked with God. And so Paul has a swing in his life where he was killing the saints, and now he's serving the saints. And then there's Pharaoh. And we know that Pharaoh wouldn't let God's people go. We know that Pharaoh thinks he's a God. And I want to show you how we abide in one of these lanes, and sometimes we abide in one lane more than the other, but we matriculate, if you will, through each one of these throughout our lives. Now, I know you think that's hard to believe, but just stay with me for a moment. God is asking his disciples, who do the people say that I am? And they tell God that some say that you are John the Baptist, and others say that you are Jeremiah. But Lord, some say that you're just a prophet with basically probably some gifts, and that you do these things. So Jesus looks at them and he asks them, so who do you say that I am? See, here it comes. It's one thing for the world to say something, for people who don't know you to say something about you. But when you have people who've been living with you, walking with you, serving with you, when you have them doubting who you are, or when you have them not really explaining who you are, that's a problem. And so Jesus asked them, who do you say that I am? Now listen to this carefully. Peter, I told you, Peter's a tough one. Yeah, Peter runs in some tough circles at times. Peter steps up and Peter makes this statement. He said, you ain't no Clark Kent. No, 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 no. You don't play second fiddle to no one. He says, you're the Christ, the Son of the living God. Jesus looks at him and Jesus says, flesh and blood has not revealed this unto you. He said, come on, you've been hanging out with my Father. That's the only way you could have received that one. Isn't it something when someone in your group, if you will, has the answer to a very important question? It makes you want to check yourself and see who you're running with. Because see, I want to run with somebody who's more saved than me. I've said this before. I want to run with someone who has a direct line to the Holy Spirit. I want to run with someone who's in my circle who can get a prayer through. That's who I want in my circle. I mean, I know you want to run with people who got money and cars and houses, and I get all that. And nothing wrong with that. I mean, I won't mind running with that, some of that too. But really, what I want is someone who can get a word through to God. I want someone who knows Him, yeah, who's closer to Him than I am. Jesus tells Peter, he calls him Sinus Bar Jonas. You know you've done something right or wrong when someone calls you out of your surname. He says, up on this rock. This is what Jesus says, up on this rock. He says, up on this revelation knowledge, upon this gift that's come through you, I'm going to build my church. Do you receive this? In the book of Matthew, chapter 16, verse 20 through 26, verse 20 reads like this. Then Jesus ordered his disciples not to tell anyone that he was the Messiah, not to tell anyone who he was. Do you know how hard that is to hold that in? To have a secret like this that's so powerful? It's tough. It's almost like Superman telling Lois Lane, don't tell anyone that I'm Superman. Not one soul. Everyone needs to think that I'm Clark Kent. But Lois, don't hold, don't tell anyone who I am. Do you know how she was jumping up? Just, I got a secret. I got a secret. And so the disciples have a secret. It's a blessed secret. And here we are in verse 21. From that time on, Jesus began to explain to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem, the Holy Land, and suffer many things at the hands of the elders, of the chief priests, of the teachers of the law, of the church. The church. The church. He's coming to the church to suffer many things. Now, I don't know if you think about that like I think about that, but shouldn't I be going to the church to be healed, to be made whole, to get rid of this burden that's on me, to come out of this depression, to really work my mental health issues? Should I be going to the church like a hospital? Well, when jealousy is involved, let me tell you something. Sometimes it can be the worst place to go. That's a sad statement to make. But sometimes it can be the worst place to go. Not the building, just the people. Let's get that straight. Not the structure, just the people. Just the people. But you've got to go to God. Keep in mind, because the church is inside of you. See, we've supplanted what the church really is, and we put it in a building when really and truly it's you. Sometimes you got to go to you, to God, and say, hey, it's me. Yes, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. And then he says, and that he must be killed, and on the third day be raised to life. Jesus Christ has this unconditional sacrificial love, watch this, for us. But because he has this unconditional sacrificial love for us, we become his kryptonite. Father. That's what we become. We become his kryptonite. Peter in verse 22 makes a statement. Peter took Jesus aside and began to rebuke him. I don't know what you're talking about. You ain't about to die. They ain't about to make you suffer. I'm here. I'm your man. We're going to take care of this. This is Peter. Peter's always talking. You got somebody like that right now. As a matter of fact, that's some of you right now. I told you you're going to see yourself. Some of you are Peter. And don't get me wrong. Peter's not a bad man. I mean, Peter's a good man. Peter's just a protective man. Some of you are protective. And Peter wants to protect God. He wants to protect Jesus. He wants to protect you because that's the Peter in you. He says, never, Lord. No, 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 no. This shall never happen to you. Peter finds his voice is what he's doing. He's talking back to Jesus and saying, I'm sorry, I'm gonna shut this down. No, I rebuke you. You know, in the Old Testament, if your father heard you praying something, he could come to you and he could nullify that prayer. He could say, no, no, that prayer ain't gonna count. No, no, I'm not gonna hold you accountable to that prayer. So the Lord wouldn't hold you accountable to that prayer if your father heard your prayer and came and said, God, no, no, that prayer, don't hold that against him. God would waive that prayer. Peter's trying to rebuke the Lord and said, no, 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 I rebuke that. I'm waiving that. I'm waiving that thought. I'm waiving this conversation. Wow, wouldn't we like it to be just that easy? Verse 23, Jesus turned and said to Peter, get behind me. Now, Jesus is walking in his truth, but he's also walking in his unconditional love for you and I. He's walking in his calling. He tells Peter, he says, get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns. He said, you dwelling in your flesh, Peter. So Peter was rebuking Jesus, and now we see Jesus rebuking Peter. Peter went from a very high to a very low. I mean, it don't get no lower than somebody calling you Satan. I'm sorry. That's like cuss words does. It don't get no lower. Jesus put Peter in his place. It's what's taking place. We are disciples of Christ. We're not superheroes for anyone. Verse 24. Then Jesus said to his disciples, whoever wants to be my disciple, not my savior, Peter, must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. Jesus said, you got a cross big enough to carry. You ain't got time to be messing with mine. Verse 25. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it. But whoever loses her life for me will find it. If you're trying to save yourself for yourself, you'll end up losing yourself in yourself. Let me say it again. If you're trying to save yourself for yourself, you'll wind up losing yourself in yourself. But if you deny yourself, if you deny the things of your flesh, you will find yourself in Jesus Christ. See, that's where we want to be. Because this flesh, please, don't sell out to this flesh. This flesh desires to commit suicide. This flesh does. Yeah, your spirit is willing, but this flesh, your spirit is able, but this flesh, oh, this flesh, believe me, it desires to take you out. Verse 26. And this is where this whole conversation hinges around. What good will it be for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? Your soul, your life is too important to gamble it. I mean, you're trying to befriend everyone in the world, and God has not asked you to befriend anyone in this world. He's asked you to be a disciple and to draw others. You're going to be hated for his name's sake. He's made that very clear. So stop trying to be a superhero, a superman, a superwoman, and just be a super friend. Start right there. But Peter had an addiction. And see, some of you are just like Peter. Now, Peter meant good, but Peter didn't mind doing bad things for his good. Like, you've got to be careful and not glorify yourself. You've got to be careful and not have self-gratification. See, that's a problem. So here we are, having a moment with Peter, if you will, talking about his addiction. But let me tell you something. I'm like you. I have an addiction as well. I mean, I do. I have an addiction, and I've had it for years. And I just didn't realize it for a long time that I had this addiction, because when you're in the midst of an addiction, you don't really think about it. You just simply addicted. But I know some of you are probably just like me. And so we all have something in common. And I know you're looking at me like, hold up, brother, what's your addiction? Well, let me tell you. Let me tell you what it is. Let me tell you what it's not. It's not fentanyl. No, that's not me. It's not Oxycontin. No, that's not me. It's not Vicodin. No, that's not me. It's not hydrocodone or methamphetamine. It's not marijuana. It's not cocaine. It's not alcohol or pills or crack, or it's not heroin. It's not even porn or sex. That's not me. See, most of you are like me, though. You have an addiction, and guess what? It's self-inflicted. Now, and that's what most addictions are. You start taking something to knock the edge off, get your little hot toddy, trying to treat yourself. But nevertheless, it's self-inflicted. Jesus Christ didn't have to use any substance, to knock the edge off. No, 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 no. And so therefore, his disciples didn't have to use any substance to knock the edge off. They're following his pattern. And some of you have been put in a bad position because your parents were alcoholics. Your parents used drugs, which made me realize that your parents can have a gene, if you will, that predisposes you to have an addiction. Now, I told you my parents didn't drink, they didn't smoke, and I meant drugs. But my mother and father both were addicted to cigarettes. And so I realized at an early age that I need to be careful, because if they're addicted to cigarettes, then maybe there's something inside of me that says, I shouldn't even try messing around with cigarettes. My father caught me once smoking, though, some marijuana, and he told me that, he says, Donnie, I tried that stuff. He didn't say stuff, okay. But he said, Donnie, I tried that stuff, and that stuff, it made my head hurt. And so he told me, using like a metaphor, if you will, he says that if I were you, I wouldn't do anything that made my head hurt. And the metaphor was that I wouldn't do anything, I wouldn't use anything, if you will, that would cause me trouble, that would bring me trouble. And so I realized my father was setting me up to do good, to be better, if you will, to not get caught up out here trying to get a buzz, trying to get a high, trying to knock the edge off, if you will. But I'm just like you. I tried cigarettes. I tried some alcohol. I tried some drugs. I mean, I tried doing some things, but it never stuck. What he told me always came back and hit me. You know, it always came back and arrested me. As a matter of fact, whenever I did something, I'd be paranoid because, and I think it was more mental than anything. It's because I could always remember him saying, you know, Donnie, I tried that stuff and it made my head hurt. Don't do anything that makes your head hurt. So I realized years later that drugs alter your thinking. The drugs alter, yeah, the way you carry yourself. I mean, drugs make you vulnerable, if you will. And I didn't like being vulnerable. I like being in control. I didn't want to be someone's victim because someone took advantage of me because I was wasted, because I was high. And so it always hit me. And so I refrained from using drugs and alcohol. I just didn't give myself to it. I mean, I tried like you. I tried when I was younger, but it just never stuck. And I think it's because of those words of Donnie. Don't ever give yourself. Don't ever do something that makes your head hurt. My father said, "You ain't Superman." No, you Clark Kent in this area. And so most of my childhood, I found myself reading comic books, giving myself to superheroes, if you will. I mean, I'd read the comics in the newspaper. I mean, I just read comic books all the time. I didn't read books, but I read comic books in the newspaper. I just love them. I was fascinated with all these superheroes, if you will, people who save the day. That just really captured my mind. As I got older, I started reading the Bible. And I realized that, wow, Jesus is a supreme divine superhero, if you will. You know, it's like, wow, all these fictional characters like Superman, Superwoman, but really and truly, they can't mess with Jesus. So I loved it. And I became addicted. And so my addiction is that I become to have a Superman complex, if you will. That's what I become to have. And that's what most of you have right now. And I'm going to share that with you. So every day, what I found myself doing without realizing it, I was putting on my Superman cape to go out and conquer the world. So when you look at the big picture, most superheroes only showed up when there was a crisis. And that's 5% of the time within the movie. But they be Clark Kent 95% of the time. But what we've done is that we flipped it. And we're showing up wearing the Superman cape, if you will, the Superwoman cape, if you will, 95% of the time. And really, there's no crisis but 5% of the time. But we're living a life. Yes, we're playing a role. We're walking around. We have these broad shoulders, if you will, trying to walk around, trying to be Superman and Superwoman. And we have a problem. Peter wanted to jump in and save Jesus. Peter wanted to, if you will, replace Jesus and put himself in Jesus' place. And Jesus was rebuking him because Jesus was telling Peter, you don't have broad enough shoulders. You weren't called for this mission. And some of you weren't called for some of the missions that you're taking on. Some of you are just like Peter. You weren't called to take that heavy load on, but you've taken it on. You see, you've demonstrated in front of your family and friends how disciplined you are, how respectful you are. Yes. How successful you are, how dependable you are, how reliable. And they will take advantage of that. Your family and friends will, because everyone sees you as this superhero, this Superman, this Superwoman. And you see yourself that way too. You get caught up into it. Come on, that boosts your ego. And so here you are, you're walking around trying to fix everything. Yeah, you've got a conversation for everybody. You know everything, you can do everything. And don't get me wrong, you might be a bad boy, you might be a bad woman, and you've got all this within you, but that's not your place. Because you start altering things that Jesus need for Sheila to do herself. You start altering things that Jesus needs for Henry to do for himself. You start coming in and you start being the savior versus the disciple. And that's a problem. That's a problem for all of us, for each one of us, because we take on that role because there's so much that needs to be done. But baby, it's not your place to do it all. It's not your place. I'm telling you, there was a shift in the atmosphere to where your children started watching Michael Jackson wearing his outfits on stage, you know, the little black suit with the hat on and with the white socks. They started watching Prince with his purple rain outfit on. They started watching all the rappers with the chains on and all the different clothes on. And they start emulating that. Now keep in mind now, when I grew up, we see all that stuff being performed on stage, and that was just an outfit for the stage. But the next day, your children would go to school and they wore those same outfits. They start emulating their celebrities, their superheroes, if you will. They start worrying that stuff and putting that stuff inside of them. And now that stuff is stuck inside of them. And you wonder how can you get it out? Well, it's gonna be tough, baby. It's gonna be tough. Once you start putting on all this stuff and you start playing all these roles, it's kind of tough to get out of these roles. And so the thing is, don't ever play dress up. Don't play dress up because you don't know what you're dressing up in. Pharaoh had a Superman complex. I told you I'm gonna show you stuff. Paul, Peter, and Pharaoh. Here's Pharaoh though. Pharaoh has a Superman complex. His lineage, his ancestors, they had kept Israel in slavery for over 400 years. And when God asked Moses to go to Pharaoh and ask for reparations, say, go ask for my people freedom. Go tell Pharaoh to let my people go. Pharaoh said, your people. Pharaoh said, these have been my people for over 400 years. And so now, you can see Pharaoh having this Superman complex, thinking he's God, thinking he's God-like. So God sends 10 plagues. And on the 10th one, which becomes Pharaoh's kryptonite, Pharaoh decides to let God's people go because he's had enough destruction. And so he lets them go. Some of you don't know how to take your cape off and let some things go. God is saying, let it go. God's got to keep sending stuff after stuff after stuff. You wonder why stuff keeps coming. It's because you won't let some stuff go. Some of you have a Superman complex for pain. Some of you have been holding on something since the third grade. Some of you have been holding on something since college, since high school. Some of you have been holding on something since you was 30. You've got some pain back there and you're still holding on to it. You tell people, no, I let that go a long time ago. Well, you might have let that go so they can see that from that perspective, but you haven't let it go where we can see it because you're still carrying it. No, I don't hold on to that no more. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Everyone around you can see it. No one just wants to tell you. Let that pain go. Whatever happened, it happened. I'm sorry. It happened. I know it hurt you. It wounded you. Yes. It's made you fearful to try anyone else, to talk to anyone else, to do anything else. But you've got to let that go. Because what's happened is you have a Superman, yes, stronghold in your life now. That thing becomes a Superman in your life, holding on to it. And watch this. Now, you become the Superwoman if you don't watch out, the Superman. Because what you're doing is now you've got these broad shoulders and you become your own savior. You're not going to let anyone get in to talk to you. Yeah, to ever hurt you again. So guess what? You've got this Superman complex of how bad you are. Relax your shoulders and rest. I told you at the beginning, just take a load off. Yeah, take all the hats off. Take off the cape. You're not Superman. What you have now is what I call a self-inflicted wound. That's what you have because whatever that was, it was. Now what you've done is you've carried it. So now it's self-inflicted. You see yourself having this Superman complex like me, rescuing everyone from everything and anything. And people come into you for every situation because I told you you're dependable, you're reliable. A lot of people not. And so if you don't watch it though, you're going to get pushed on this island all by yourself. You're going to be isolated. You don't get invited to the parties because you just don't. It's because, oh, he won't mind. I mean, come on, that's Donnie. He's Superman. I mean, when you get sick, no one calls because, oh, he's going to be okay. That's Donnie. He's Superman. You see what it is? Just what's happening. It's self-inflicted. You did it to yourself. Everyone has expectations for you and of you because of who you have become. The fixer, the guy who has all the answers. Yeah, the woman who can do it all. I mean, that's who you become in their eyesight. Don't get mad at them. That's what you've displayed. And don't get me wrong. I mean, somebody's got to do it, but you've stepped up to do it. My lights have never been turned off. My father lights have never turned off. My water bill has never been turned off. My gas. I've always had a home. I've always had a car. I mean, come on. I've always made sure that my wife and my children didn't have to feel lack. And don't get me wrong. We've been in poverty. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying we ain't been poor before. We have. But what I'm saying is I always made something happen. My father always made something happen. And so here comes this Superman complex. I'm always going to save the day. Sometimes you got to let things happen because you need to understand you're not Superman. You need a wake-up call. I like the Jewish tradition, how they pray 3 times a day. I love it. I love it. Because when you pray 3 times a day, guess what that gets you an opportunity to do? To reflect. It gives you an opportunity to take your cape off every day, 3 times. You take your Superman, Superwoman cape off for a moment because now you got to pray and you got to reflect and you can reset yourself because you know you're not Superman. You know you're not Superwoman. You know you're not a superhero. No, 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 no. You should just be a disciple. That's all you need to be. I love it that you can reflect like that. I pray that you start reflecting. I pray that you start praying more so you can reflect more. Because everyone sees you being reliable and accountable and responsible. And so, yeah, they bring you so much stuff. But stop trying to be Superman and just be a super friend. That would be my advice to you. King David tried to have a Superman complex. He'd always pray before God before every battle. With this particular battle, he didn't pray. Satan provoked him to step outside of himself, outside of his routine of praying to God before he went into battle. And God allowed Satan to tear him apart. Not only tear him apart, but even after the battle, 70,000 men were slain because David thought he was Superman. You see, you can get in the way. You can mess some things up. I watch my wife and my mother-in-law, my sisters. I've watched women in general have this Superwoman cape on. I mean, they put it on, you wear it well too. I watch my wife coming home from work and I watch her taking care of the kids, satisfying the kids, and then satisfying me, taking care of me. And then I watch her getting in bed, crawling in bed as she get up off her knees from praying before she gets in bed. So let me back this up a little bit to show you the full weight of what I've seen. I watch my wife get up every morning and get the kids up, go fix breakfast, feed the kids, clothe the kids, start getting herself ready for work as well, and throw something in her mouth as she's running out the door to take the kids to the daycare or to school. And you said, Donnie, where were you, Superman? I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm doing my part. I'm just giving you what I watched, though, what I've seen my mom and my sisters and my aunts. I'm just giving you just what I've seen, what I've been exposed to. And then to go to work and to work in a world where there's no praise. All you have is people preying on you. Yes, other females or males, depends on what they're after. But they're all about trying to break up your little happy home. They're all about trying to break up your happy home between you and your husband. Watch this, between you and your wife. But watch this, the bigger part is Satan is always trying to break up your happy home between you and Jesus Christ. See, that's what he's after. He's trying to mess up your little happy home. And we so crazy. We out here, I got to have a job. I got to work. If I could just reel it back in, my wife would never have worked. Never. Because there's nothing out there for us but evil. The world, that's what they call it, the world, for a reason. if you take one letter out the L, it's called the word. But God put an L in it, called this the world. And the world is always turning. And so everything changes every day. And it doesn't change for your good. Not in the world. In the word it does. Be careful thinking that you're Superwoman. Getting up, putting all that time and doing all this stuff. And then you come back home and start all back over again. I told you, with very little praise, you're back on this routine. You're back on this hamster wheel, if you will. Burning the calendar on both ends, trying to be Superwoman. And then the question is asked, are you happy? How can you be happy in the midst of all that? No one's happy. People say, if mom ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. No. Ain't nobody happy. Forget all about who's supposed to be happy to be happy. No. If you don't set up a happy situation, then you're not going to be happy. The bottom line, women, stop thinking that you can take an incompatible man and marry him and that you can change him. You're not Superwoman. No, you don't have a cape that big. If he don't fit, you must have quit. Please don't say I do. Just keep it moving. You're not the one for that job. That's not your job. In the midst of our busy schedules, I just pray that we take time out to put Jesus on our calendar to pray so you can reset and reflect. That's the one thing we should do. Because, see, Jesus finished this job. He never had if you will, a Superman complex like you and I do. He never was addicted to praise and self-glorification like you and I can be. Jesus was just Jesus. We're told that he was approachable. He was busy serving and saving. We can't save anybody, but we can draw. And here's the most important part for us. We are disciples of man, of women. That's our job. That's what we should be doing. Yes. What good would it be for someone to gain the whole world and to lose their soul? What a sad day. What a sad witness. I pray that you're on your job. You're not trying to be like Peter. You're not trying to be like Pharaoh. And you're not trying to be like Paul. Some of you in church and you've got the church split. You see, half of Paul's life was killing the saints. The other half was saving the saints. I pray that at this crossroad in your life, that you realize that you have an addiction. You have a Superman, a Superwoman complex, and you've been addicted to some stuff in your life. You've been dividing the church way too long. It's time for now for you to join up with the church and move in the right direction. Don't be a Paul in that particular situation. No, 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 no. Don't be a Peter and get rebuked. And please don't be Pharaoh and think that you're God. I pray that you take off your cape and you put on Romans 10 and 9, that you repent and that you confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, that you believe in your heart that God has raised his son from the dead, and you too shall be saved. See, no more need for Superman. Just be the man that God's called you to be, and you be blessed.